Day turned into night. The small town of Baler, Aurora, was nearly washed away by the 1735 tsunami. In the rubble, the Angaras led other survivors in restoring their town, rebuilding their lives. In the 1900s, the Angaras were elected to public offices from the barangay to municipal and provincial posts, all the way to the Congress. Juan Angara, a public nurse, dentist, and elementary teacher, served as the first mayor of Baler under the Commonwealth in 1934. With that long lineage of service, Edgardo J. Angara continues the tradition of commitment and carves his own place in the history of that small town and in the history of our country. Young Angara believed that a lawyer has the responsibility to continue a national tradition of service. His innate sense of service and leadership fired up his dream of becoming a lawyer. Edgardo J. Angara became a lawyer in 1959. Honoring his lineage, Angara represented the province of Quezon as a delegate in the 1971 Constitutional Convention. A brilliant lawyer, he introduced provisions that served and protected Filipinos in the most relevant way of the time. Foremost among them were the governance of public utilities, wise development of national resources, and the protection of civil and political rights. A strong advocate of democratic principles in a politically tumultuous time, he sought to place martial rule under civilian authority, ever supreme over the military, even in a national crisis.
We were in a tumultuous situation, and these were the CONCON delegates, 320 of them, the last election before martial law was declared.
Angara's deep-rooted Republican principles made him strive to preserve, protect, and enhance a strong system of checks and balances in government when the idea of democracy was being discredited from all sides. Some of its champions were its harshest critics.
We were 320 delegates in that assembly, coming from diverse persuasion, diverse background. He was a very good negotiator. Sometimes the ideas were so diverse from both ends. And he's able to meld conflicting ideas into one. I have known Ed to be a very effective negotiator, finding win-win solutions. For Ed Angara to land in the very powerful steering committee is a feat in itself because he was not really into politics before that. He also was, if I recall right, a member of the Committee on Justice. As a lawyer, he is very much committed to justice and the rule of law.
His provision on public accountability of members of Congress became a key feature of the National Assembly's design in the 1973 Constitution, and later in the 1987 Constitution. Seeing how laws and the practice of law shape society as much as society shapes law and legal practice, Delegate Angara from Quezon made up his mind. He would rather do good law, over which he could have more say, than good politics, which was increasingly difficult for good politicians to do.
Eddie Angara is all kinds of lawyers. He's a corporate lawyer, he's a litigator, he's a labor lawyer, but most of all, he has got very good common sense and very practical.
Together with his friends from the University of the Philippines College of Law, he founded ACRA, the first Filipino law firm dedicated to the service of the Filipino. This mission was highly unusual in 1972, still the era of old American or Americanized firms servicing mostly big American and foreign corporations. The firm was to realize Angara's Filipino-first philosophy in the practice of law.
ACRA was meant to provide a law firm for the rising Filipino entrepreneur who would have problems obtaining services from the major law firms because The latter already had as clients the large American corporations, and they would have a possible conflict of interest if they represented the Filipino entrepreneur.
Pushing the societal value of his profession, Angara became the president of the Philippine Bar Association and subsequently the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. Under his term, he pushed for a thorough revamp of the judicial system.
Little is said also about his activities in the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. He was and still is a pillar in the Integrated Bar of the Philippines among lawyers.
He was also the founding president of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Law Association, which is the only regional law organization in the world and, to this day, a major force in ASEAN affairs.
Well, he had the unique trait of leadership because he was able to put together lawyers and judges who, before the association was formed, were virtually indifferent to each other, if not outright suspicious, if I may say so. This organization, little did we know, would be a linchpin in the development of the ASEAN into the ASEAN Economic Community, which will be inaugurated in 2015. We now have an active role in the CAFTA, or the China-ASEAN dialogue, which leads to free trade.
Then came a challenge vastly different and quite exciting that he could not refuse it. The presidency of his alma mater, the University of the Philippines. A strong advocate of effective modern education, he rehabilitated the academic system. An efficient executive, he implemented singular and profound changes. A visionary, he created self-governing campuses and launched pioneering academic programs to impart a broader-based and irresistible momentum to his reforms.
He created a committee which he called the Committee to Review Academic Programs, and the acronym for that is CRAP. So that's to take care of our academic programs. And then he also created a Management Review Committee to look at how colleges and the other units in the university are managed. So he looked at both academic programs as well as governance.
As the Diamond Jubilee president, Angara felt he had to take the university closer to real fiscal and academic independence.
It was during his time when the university was able to get fiscal autonomy from government, and that is being implemented until now. In fact, that served as a template for other state universities and colleges. Okay, that's one. Second, I think, which is also very important, is when he created 3 colleges out of 1 college.
As university president, Angara developed a deeper understanding of the Philippines, the worsening situation of the Filipinos under Marcos's leadership. In the midst of political turmoil, the divided Filipino people needed a singular and solid vanguard that would give a stable and genuine expression of the popular will clamoring for change. The National Citizens Movement for Free Election was tasked to monitor the 1984 constitutional plebiscite on amendments made by the interim Batasang Pambansa. With his sterling reputation and track record, Angara became a member of the board and later the chairman of NAMFREL. He was the stable and steadying force amidst the warring factions spanning the range of those who would fight any reforms and those who wanted any kind of change. It was the best of times, yet it could be even better. A time crying for change, yet a time calling for stability as well. There was a chance to build anew and a danger of destroying what had to be saved. not least the greatest demonstration of peaceful democratic expression in the dark 20th century. And Edgardo J. Angara was primed for the challenge of the times. Out of many who had served the cause of democracy with distinction, President Cory Aquino picked Angara to be one of 24 to be the first Senate of the new democracy she was building. He ran and won. In the Senate, he carefully chose his assignments and focused on areas that were critical to the quality of life of every Filipino. As chair of the Senate Committee on Education, Culture, and Sports, Angara pushed and legislated enduring key reforms in the educational system. Named Mr. Education, he authored the joint resolution that created the EDCOM, which laid down the agenda for educational transformation in the country.
The output of ED in matters of legislation basically covered by educational importance, especially for our people. And to my mind, in that field, ED was really incomparable.
He authored laws that built the foundation and erected the edifice of free universal education from child to adult.
It seems to me that the most important contribution that he has made is convincing people, the citizens, and lawmakers, and these other decision makers, that education lies at the core of human development and national development.
He also authored the law that created the National Commission for Culture and the Arts.
I think that he has consolidated all efforts of different organizations in the country into one effective structure. It is not just in the performance arts that his influence has been seen. Creators of art, artists themselves, performers, and the focus on the national culture has been so sharpened that in practically every town of the country there is an effort to demonstrate their respective creativities.
Angara strengthened the health system of the time. He empowered its greatest resource, the public health workers, through his Magna Carta of Public Health Workers.
In that particular law, it's the first time ever the rights of the health workers have been stated explicitly. So that's a big change.
He also created HealthCom, which reports to Congress to guide policy on health.
As a senator, he was a visionary. Senator Angara, visualized this thing about health. One time he told me, people shouldn't even get sick. He was saying that, how much can we prevent in terms of diseases? How much can we cure? He had this sense of, this sense of balance, like prevention and curative care. He had that sense, and he said that, we should have a health system that would revolve around people's needs, not vice versa.
He authored the act that recognized the invaluable contribution of an easily overlooked segment of society then, the senior citizens. He immeasurably enhanced the life of those who had already devoted so much of their productive lives to their families, communities, and country.
Senator Angara's legislative measures, they were able to give Filipinos access to health care that improved their health, cheaper medicines that improved their health as well. And, doctors and nurses stayed around longer because of the pay, the improvements in pay, and these people improved their health as well.
Angara also gave recognition to a key sector of Philippine society. The Magna Carta of Small Farmers detailed the rights and obligations of small farmers and the government's protection of this key but vulnerable sector. To aid this, he pushed for the passage of the Rural Banks Act. Angara co-authored the law that strongly encouraged cooperatives and small and medium businesses in the country. Angara also institutionalized good governance in his Ombudsman Law. A staunch protector of the country's national resources, he authored the law that established the National Integrated Protected Areas System. The 8th Congress was a highly productive term. Year after year, a milestone legislation was enacted. His performance earned Angara the distinction of Outstanding Senator during his first term, conferred by the Senate Press Club. This at a time when national public service was in disarray, the public distrustful, and the media critical. Fired up by his exceptional trust, Angara ran for re-election in the 1992 polls. Edgardo J. Angara won a second term in the Senate with the third largest number of votes. He was entering a harder and darker phase in the rebirth of the nation. There was a severe electricity crisis. An old protected economy was being shaken by emerging global economic trends that promised great dividends, yet equally posed grave dangers. He carried on his chairmanship of the Committee on Education and at the same time, the powerful Committee on Finance. With the support of his colleagues, Angara was elected the Senate President of the 9th Congress. His first act was to invite each and every member of the government, regardless of affiliation or persuasion, to a cooperative and purposeful governance. Angara then introduced the Legislative and Executive Development Advisory Council, a historic meeting of the President and his cabinet with members of Congress and leaders from key sectors of the economy and society to chart government's legislative programs. At his instance, a socio-economic summit was held, an unparalleled teamwork and the first of its kind.
He is so deliberate in all the legislative actions. He studies and he consults and creates the atmosphere so that there will be a cooperation between majority and minority during the time that they were deliberating very important pieces of legislation for the benefit of the country.
In another first, a social compact, then President Fidel V. Ramos, Senate President Angara, Speaker Jose de Venecia, and 800 leaders of business, labor, and community groups sealed an agreement that expedited legislation and its implementation.
During the People's Summit, that was the height of the darkest hours in the Philippines when blackouts were happening. At any time, without being on schedule during the day, can happen in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And at the People's Summit, they were able to create an atmosphere that made people work towards a solution to the current power and energy problem at the time. That was the result later on of legislative acts, proactive acts that addressed the problem of the country, and which after 1 year of deliberation in the Senate and the House were enacted into laws.
All 15 priority bills recommended by the summit were passed into law. This urgency resulted in the enactment of vital laws under Angara's leadership. Among them were breakthrough acts authored by Angara himself. He enacted the law that split the huge educational system into 3 sections, the CHED, TESDA, and DepEd, allowing a focused and wiser allocation and more accountable use of resources.
It's a tremendous effort, and now we realize, in spite of the opposition at the time, to divide the educational organization into 3 parts, now we realize that each of those organizations, the Commission on Higher Education, the TESDA, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, and Basic Education, have unequal attention. Whereas before, the attention of one manager had to be divided into three. Now that attention simultaneous to each of the three organizations, and each body managing the organization can concentrate and get all the full attention.
He strengthened the teaching faculty with the establishment of Centers of Excellence in Teaching and the Teachers Education Council. As he systematized teaching as a profession, he also made provisions in the availability of better learning tools. More importantly, Angara pushed for the accessibility of education to Filipinos throughout the country.
I would think that it is Senator Angara who has almost single-handedly, because he was chairman of the committee, his persuasiveness and the importance of education in the consciousness of all the legislators. But it seems to me that he steered the attention of our legislators into ensuring that educational legislations are passed.
In health, Angara worked for the same accessibility and paved the way for the introduction of the universal health insurance for everyone.
That really changed the way people got access to hospital services. Then, during the time in the 1980s, people didn't have money to buy, to even get a room in the hospital, much less a ward, a bed. It's really pathetic. Now at least we have PhilHealth.
The Senate President, Senator Edgardo Angara, was so creative that he has been able to present before the Senate various pieces of legislation that no one can imagine could have been presented in Congress. And all of these laws have benefited many of us, including young children, the entire community, and even the whole population of the Philippines, from children to senior citizens to science, and all those that are now benefiting millions of Filipinos.
Angara also paved the way for the country's entry into the World Trade Organization. While opening up the economy to free trade, he sought to protect Filipino workers and sensitive industries first. Angara's leadership in the Senate from January 1993 to August 1995 was one of the most productive eras.
Well, as Senate President, I think his legacy is being able to institute a proactive leadership in the Senate, so much so that there were very, very close collaboration between the Senate majority and the minority, and thus becoming a productive legislative body, a close collaboration between the Senate and the House. At the same time, he succeeded in professionalizing the service of the Senate Secretariat.
The Senate enacted more than 500 laws, including 130 economic reform laws, another landmark for the Philippine Senate. The historic multi-sectoral collaboration was also a defining accomplishment. The country experienced an increasing economic growth. Inflation was tamed to a single digit. The volume of capital inflows was unprecedented, and our accumulation of international reserves was without parallel in the past. In the 10th Congress, Angara continued to focus on areas that critically impinge on the Filipinos' way of life: education and agriculture. His laws were drawn to make lasting reforms and enduring impact.
His legislations cut across the national life, and not only horizontally but vertically, and economically, from the poor to the rich, have benefited from the results of his legislations.
Senator Angara led the Senate in many of the policy debates which resulted in policies being crafted and governed our country and will govern our country for the next several years.
Angara pushed for agricultural stability and ensuring food security for the country. His notable AFMA Act of 1997 was even duplicated by neighboring ASEAN countries.
Ed Angara is a consensus maker. He does not push his way and his weight around. So I felt the gentle touch of Senator Ed Angara. He taught me how to be a better legislator. Ed Angara set the example of building up consensus, talking to each of us, even one-to-one, one-on-one, and even in coffee breaks and other breaks, so that you can feel that his sure way of putting many of us together to attain certain measures have become even more effective and more relevant.
At the end of his second senatorial term, the doors of the Senate shut behind him. Angara took his leave of the August Chamber, but not of his felt obligations to his country. He would find other venues of service. In 1998, Angara was appointed chairman of the Philippine National Bank. In a continuing drive to boost the country's economy, he initiated aggressive reforms in the bank, which turned its share value by 137% in just a year. This roused the bank to become the most trusted bank by the Filipinos at the time. For the first time, Angara also introduced an equitable profit sharing with PNB's 5,000 employees. As he guaranteed their tenure, this fired the bank's workforce to secure the country's standing as a credit institution. With his notable contributions in agriculture as a senator, Edgardo J. Angara was appointed Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. Furthering his AFMA Act of 1997, he initiated concrete programs that boosted growth rate to an all-time high.
He knew that agriculture was key in the economy and improving the economy, considering that we are an agricultural economy.
Angara vigorously administrated infrastructure development in both macro and micro levels, truly revitalizing the sector. His term recorded the highest growth in corn production, increased farm incomes, stabilized price of rice, and a recovering fish and livestock industry. In the midst of the Asian financial crisis, this marked improvements that led to a remarkable 6.5% economic growth.
In the Department of Agriculture, I would think that he was the best secretary that the country has ever had. So it translated directly to him being the most productive.
A seventh highest satisfaction rating by private organizations among 32 government agencies. In a belated effort to save his disintegrating authority and power, President Joseph Estrada appointed Angara as his executive secretary. Angara served for 13 days. It was also the last 13 days of President Erap. But a critical time for a statesman resolved that if change must come, it will come, but with peace and order and an abiding sense of legitimacy.
His key contribution was a peaceful transition at that time, because there was threat of some violent takeover at that time. So I thought that was his key contribution.
Following another key changeover in the government, Angara returned to the Senate in 2001. He proceeded to enact standards in government and paid homage to the civil and political rights of overseas Filipinos. In the following Congress, Edgardo J. Angara strengthened his advocacy of good governance. Angara also authored a joint resolution that created COMSTE, a bicameral body responsible for enhancing the country's global competitiveness through science, technology, and engineering. As its chair, he pushed for the funding of its proposals, including the Renewable Energy Research and Development Institute and the Philippine Industrial Research and Development Institute. As already seen in his early years of Senate service, Angara advocated for science and technology as indispensable to national strength and economic growth. Advancing more suitable economic growth, Angara put reform measures in place that were aimed at strengthening the financial system and building up the capital markets.
For a long time, the economy has been constrained by the lack of good information on our borrowers that in turn has made it difficult for our banks and other credit providers to provide credit on reasonable terms and more credit access, especially to SMEs and the unbanked population of the country. So with a good Credit Information System Act, these markets will be opened up for lending activities, and that will have a direct impact on economic growth and also in promoting greater equity among the public.
The measures he got enacted inspired public confidence in the local banking and financial system, empowering small borrowers and boosting personal savings in the midst of the worst global financial crisis since the Great Depression.
Aside from helping promote the capital market, the work of Senator Angara also complements very well the advocacies of the Bangko Sentral, particularly with respect to financial education and consumer protection. And because the laws that he has authored serve to create or help create a balanced and therefore a more stable banking system, this strengthens the transmission mechanism for monetary policy and thus makes for a more effective central bank.
Angara played a key role in putting a social safety net during the crisis.
He brought vision into the legislative process. He appreciated the far-reaching consequences of the specific pieces of legislation that he strongly fought for. And in advocating those, he applied a rigorous thought process to make sure that it all made sense and it will deliver on the anticipated benefits that are promised by those legislation.
His re-election to his fourth term in the 14th Senatorial Congress made Edgardo J. Angara the longest-serving senator in the post-EDSA legislature. In the current 15th Congress, Angara continues to champion his advocacies as fervently as if it were his first and not his fourth term.
He remains as one of the more astute and very wise senators, including as a Senate President during our times.
He chairs the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, Committee on Science and Technology, and the COMSTE. With his deeply rooted appreciation of art and culture, he institutionalized state support and protection. His National Cultural Heritage Act requires the state to preserve, protect, and conserve the Philippines' tangible and intangible treasures. Recognizing the 500 years of shared legacy with Spain and Mexico, Angara led the enactment of the Philippine-Spanish Friendship Day Act and the Dia del Gallon. The UNESCO passed a resolution declaring October 8 as Dia del Gallon. For his unprecedented effort, he was awarded Spain's Premio Casa Asia in 2010, making him the first Southeast Asian to win the Foreign Policy Prize. The country is currently an active member of the Unión Latina, an organization consisting of 37 member nations in the Neo-Latin languages, with Angara as its official representative. For his long-standing commitment to education, Angara has been a recipient of the Comandeur dans l'Ordre de Palme Medal, a special citation conferred by the French Republic to individuals engaged in promoting excellence in higher education. The University of the Philippines honored him with a doctorate degree in law. Through the years, Angara's advocacy for good governance has never wavered. Following the enactment of his anti-corruption bills, he co-authored the GOCC Governance Act of 2011. For the last 30 years, Angara has been campaigning for the Political Party Development Act, which will institutionalize party discipline and platform-based politics. He is the Chair and Chief Executive Officer of the Global Organization of Parliamentarians Against Corruption, or GOPAC, which is based in Ottawa, Canada. Angara earlier led the establishment of the Southeast Asian Parliamentarians Against Corruption, or CPAC, of which he was the first president. Among his numerous recognitions and awards, Angara is the first Lee Kuan Yew Fellow in the Philippines, an award the Singapore government confers on individuals who demonstrate outstanding public service. He was also decorated with the Grand Cordon Order of the Rising Sun, one of the highest honors bestowed on individuals by His Majesty Emperor Akihito, for his distinguished achievement in promoting friendly relations and economic cooperation between Japan and the Philippines.
In the long years that I have known Ed, I have known him as a very devoted legislator. And he has made a lot of impact, not only domestically, but also among foreign audiences.
He would serve a client when he was practicing law. In public service, his client was the Philippines. His intelligence, his insight, his knowledge of human nature, and most of all, his knowledge of conditions in our country enabled him not only to participate in meaningful debates, but also to introduce a number of significant bills.
So you can see that he spanned over 24 years or so, both in government, private, Senate, and executive. I think what is important about his presence in public service is the example that he shows and continues to show on how to conduct the sponsoring of bills, important measures in the Senate, and concentrating on having them passed.
Here we celebrate all the things, the good things that Ed Angara has done. Actually, I think what he's done is great as far as it goes. He's done with running a state university. He's done with pioneering in a new kind of law practice. He's done with legislation, with doing some pretty brilliant work in Congress.
He led the Senate and the country in many policy issues and policy debates. And his record in the Senate would be replete with work that no one else could have achieved, whether in the field of education, in the field of health, in the field of law, in the field of economics. Ed loved challenges, whether it is a policy debate or in the operation of the policies that he has crafted. And therefore, Ed made very, very significant contributions in the Senate and for the country.
Edgardo J. Angara's deep commitment to and wide experience in public service now spans over 4 decades of exemplary performance, untainted politics, and devoted service.
The man has a vision, but in the meantime, before he gets to that vision, or maybe he's in the process of getting it, he's not going to stop shirking his work, the work that comes to him, the work he must do. In other words, Ed Angara is not the type of person who will give up his duty in order to pursue his dreams. He'll do his duty first. And maybe that is his dream, to do his duty well.
Once a young boy from Baler with a dream of taking up and continuing a long and distinguished lineage of public service, Angara has carried on over 40 years of the service of the Filipino nation.
Ed is the kind of politician who people can trust, can stand up for what is right, and yet adapt to a given situation when the need arises.
Remaining consistently rooted in a noble aspiration of genuine service.
He's a man who wants results. In his legislation, he has already tried to foster a very strong sense of nation, because he understands, that culture, the arts provide that granite foundation for a country's identity. And he also knows that without identity, there is no nation.
His legacy for the Filipino people is precisely the enactment of laws which affects the lives of our people, which secured our future in terms of correct policies, and indeed we are indebted to Senator Angara for all the things that he has done for our country.
Never wavering in his commitment to the nation, delivering unsurpassed performance, and contributing immeasurably to each and every Filipino, from the youngest to the oldest generations.
A good Filipino, a good man, and a good father, not only to his son and other children, but to the whole country. He is a father of his country.
In the words of the late Senate President Blas P. Ople, Angara is a living national treasure, exemplifying a tradition of exceptional national leadership. And that is the legacy of the son of Baler, a scholar and a senator, but always and ever as he wanted it, a devoted servant to his country. Edgardo J. Angara.